Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. My name is ItsCoozie, and today's video is going to be a little bit different. For those of you that don't know, there's been a lot of personal life changes that have been happening. My wife and I, at the time of recording this, are about to start the home buying process, so lots of stuff has been happening. But this video is basically a clip of me on stream basically telling you guys my life story. Now, I know that some people are kind of on the fence about putting their personal stuff out on the internet, and I get that. But in my opinion, I think it's super important that if you have a story to tell, to put it out there because it could help somebody in some way, shape, or form. What you're about to see has been left primarily unedited. There's been a couple cuts, but it's been left primarily unedited for the sake of authenticity, which is why this video is so long. But there's also some pretty heavy and dark topics talked about in this video, so if things like suicide trigger you, consider this your warning. And if you know me personally and you came here through my Facebook post, hopefully this will answer a lot of the questions you might have. So again, I know this video is going to be kind of long, but if you really want to get to know me to the T, and you want to understand kind of why I am the way that I am, it wouldn't be a bad idea to watch this all the way through. So enough pitter patter chitter chatter. Let's get into it. Okay.
I came into the middle of this.
Okay. Let me bring you up to speed. So I am unintentionally telling you guys my life story. Okay. So quick little story time that isn't going to be so quick. All right. Hello, Adam, by the way. Oh, that's super cute. So I was just telling people about how last night went, and then I went on a rabbit trail about my dad and I's relationship, and then I realized through that if I were to tell you guys like our relationship and how it is, you know, you wouldn't really understand it, and it would be confusing unless you understood what I've been through, pretty much. And so I was just saying how before streaming I was hella involved in like the church, and you know, I was a worship leader. I did that shit for like 7 years. Went to school for 2 years for worship ministry or music for the majority of it. There was obviously some like biblical classes that I had to take and theology classes that I took, but yeah. Was interning at a church, was also in a band at the time that we played on the weekends, and then I got away from that church because it was a weird vibe, dude. Like the youth pastor, because I was leading worship for the youth group, and the youth pastor was very like controlling, or my way or the highway kind of deal. So I got out of that, and then I started leading worship at this church plant. And Adam, I don't know if they got church plants up where you live, but just in case you don't know what they are, because you seem like, I feel like you go to a more traditional thing, but basically a church plant is basically like a group of individuals that have an intention to start a church, but it typically starts out in like a house or just like a small weekly gathering or whatever that eventually grows into, you know, your normal run-of-the-mill stereotypical church. So I was saying how my first night was a Wednesday night because that's when they met. And the weekend prior, I had a show. No, the weekend prior, I had gone up to see an old friend. My sister and I did. We spent the weekend up in Boone, which is a small town about 2 hours away in the mountains from where I live. And I remembered on Thursday that I had left my clothes. Well, the first night at the church plant was whenever I first saw Macy. And she caught my eye, to say the least. All right. Well, then the next day while I was at work, I got a message from Macy Simmons on Facebook. She slid in, for the record, she slid into my DMs, all right? And she, you know, just striking up bullshit conversation like, hey, how are you, blah, blah, blah. And then I think she was trying to ask me out on a date by asking me, hey, what are you doing after work today? And I was like, well, I actually got to run up to Boone real quick because I've got some clothes that I need to go grab. And she's like, are you going by yourself? And I said, yeah, I mean, I was just going to run up there and back real quick. You know, I'm not like trying to stay up there. And she was like, do you care if I join you? And I was like, yeah, fuck it. Why not? Right.
She must have been under the influence.
Appreciate that. Yeah, we'll go with that. Anyways, so I was like, yeah, sure. So I swing by her apartment and I pick up this girl that I've never had a verbal conversation with. Okay. and it's 2 hours up there, 2 hours back. So the entire 4 hours, we talked the entire time, and I was just saying, and this was right whenever you sent your TTS. I was saying how by the time we started heading back, there was something that clicked in my brain that told me that she was going to be like the one that I marry, obviously, if she wanted to down the road, obviously. And one thing that I forgot to mention was previously, like growing up, my whole life was very sheltered. I wasn't like homeschooled sheltered, like weird, but like I was required to go to church pretty much. I mean, it's not like, I didn't want to or whatever, but, I pretty much felt obligated by both sides of my family to go to church. My childhood was very sheltered. My middle and high school era was very sheltered. There were things that people would talk about that I couldn't really relate to because I hadn't seen it or experienced it, right? So this is all going to make sense. I promise. Just bear with me, and we will get into gameplay here in a moment. I promise. All right? But, so, Macy and I, we meet in like 2014. And we date. She must still be to last this long with him. You guys are the cutest couple alive. Thank you. And yeah, you're not wrong, Raven. So I mean, Macy and I have had like our ups and downs and all that stuff. But long story short, we got engaged on Valentine's Day of 2016. So we dated for about 2 years, okay? And real quick, let me just tell you how the engagement went. All right, so my older sister and my then brother-in-law and me and Macy all went bowling. And I let them know about the plan, okay, that I had for Macy, right? So we went bowling, and real quick ad time. Yeah, just go back and watch the VOD if you're that keen. But for everyone else that's sub, this doesn't matter. So we go bowling. There's 4 of us, right? And Megan, my older sister, takes Macy because I kind of give Megan the look of like, hey, now's the time, right? So she's like, Macy, let's go get a drink at the bar, right? Or no, I was still like a good Christian boy then. So, we didn't drink out, we didn't drink at all. So they went to go get like a soda or some shit. And while she was gone, Josh, my then brother-in-law, helped me like, keep an eye out for her. And there was 4 of us, right? And so the idea, this is corny as hell now that I look at it, all right? But it gets better. While she was gone, I took the 4 names that were up on the screen, the scoreboard, right? And I changed them to "Will you marry me?" Okay? She comes back. All right? And I'm like, "Babe, it's your turn." And she was like, "No, it's not." She was like, I never go first. Because we had just started. We had just started the bowling game or whatever. She was like, "I never go first." I was like, just fucking go. Like, look up there. Your name's up there. And she turns around. She looks and she stares. And I kid you not. She's staring. And she turns around. And the first thing she says? She says, "Who's Will?" What? I said, "Read it again." And then she had like a 12-pound ball in her hand because, my wife is fucking freakishly strong. She scares me. But she... What the fuck? But yeah, she could probably break me in half with two fingers, right? Well, then it clicks. She's got this ball, right? And I'm standing right there. No, actually, she says, "Who's Will?" And I say, "Read it again." She turns back around. That's whenever I get down on my knee. And then she turns around, it clicks, and she also sees me, and she's like, oh my God. She starts crying, and she's like juggling this ball. Mind you, here's the ball, here's my foot. So it's about to like, and I was like, please don't drop the ball. Anyways, she said yeah. And then we were engaged for about 2 years. No, we were engaged for over a year just because of like money to save her for the wedding and all that shit. Yeah. And as far as me personally, I was still in the band. No, I just left the band at that point. And I had also left the church plant that I was at because, as I said earlier, the pastor of that church was very, Chris said it, Jim Jones, like the preacher of the church in the 70s where it was like a multi-ethnic church, and he basically uprooted them and went to like this remote island and they eventually killed them all. Yeah. That guy. The pastor of the church that I was at was very similar in characteristics, right? So anyways, I then take a position, like an actual like paid position as a worship leader at another church plant with a younger pastor. That was really good. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about, how to lead and, all that stuff. The pastor was super cool. And yeah, so Macy and I got engaged. We're hanging out, being, fiancés and all that stuff, and planning a wedding. And, Macy wasn't a bridezilla. She wasn't like, she didn't have her whole wedding planned out or anything like that. Like, she's great. So then we, June 16th rolls around, we get married, and this is 2018. And this is where it's going to kind of get a little bit more somber and a little bit shitty. But you got to hear this, and I'm putting this out on the internet because I could give two fucks. Maybe it'll help somebody. I don't know. But you got to hear this because you'll understand. I'll bring it all back around regarding my dad, here in a moment. So we get married. And they always say the first year of marriage is always the hardest. That wasn't the case for Macy and I until something that happened. All right. So after we got married, I had started really struggling with depression for the first time in my life. I had always kind of had some sort of like mood shit going on just because of the shit that I went through growing up with my mom. But I didn't really pay that much attention to it. But like I said, while I was at this church plant, I started practicing self-awareness, just being like in tune with myself and realizing where there was any kind of like negative feelings or, something that was like bad. Right. And depression was a big part of it. And so whenever you struggle with mental health, you're very sporadic a lot of times. So I had a really good job. I was still working for my dad. I was there for 4 years, and and I quit that, started working like this part-time delivery job, whatever, and all that stuff. And so the depression just kept getting worse and worse. All the while I was still leading worship at this new church plant. And so it was like this constant battle because in ministry, you have to, because the congregation is looking to you as an example, you can't show any kind of like negative emotion, right? Well, there was one Sunday I was leading, and you ever had such a bad depressive episode that you just cry all the fucking time? Like for no reason? That morning I got there and it was bad, dude. The way it worked was we got there, we had to set everything up because we were like, we were meeting in a local YMCA. And for those of you that don't know what that is, it's basically like a community rec center that's open to the public. You have to have a membership though, so I guess it's not really public. But anyways, we would set up and tear down, obviously, and the service gets started, and we're like singing and all that shit, and we get to this one part of a song, and I just lose it. And then I just like, you know, we're chilling. We're chilling in you know, just letting the song breathe. And I do something I didn't think I would ever do as a worship leader or like a member of staff of church. I had said, I really don't want to be here, in the microphone, to everybody out there that was looking at me. I said, I don't want to be here. I didn't really go into much detail, obviously, but it was weird. And so basically we had to cut the set short, and that was whenever things kind of started going really downhill for me. As I mentioned, like at the start of this big ass diatribe, talking about streaming, I put way too much energy into stuff a lot of times, and it leads to burnout. And that's how it was getting for me with church, because there was more expectation from me, because there was a lot more responsibility. And so therefore I felt like I had to compensate and put all of this energy into it, just to make sure that everybody is happy. Okay. Essentially, I was too concerned about what everybody else thought. Okay. And I mean, that translated into Macy and I's relationship, where, you know, she's got arguably the biggest heart on the face of the planet. If a fly drops dead in front of her, she's going to fucking cry. But she's also the type of person that you don't want to fuck with, because the same emotion she expresses whenever she's sad is the same emotion she expresses whenever she's fucking pissed. Okay? So, yeah. But just that, plus, you know how typically in a normal relationship, like the guy is the wild one, and, you know, is doing all this shit, and then the girl kind of like, what's the word? Like locks him down or whatever. You know, makes him grow up or whatever. And, yeah, it was the opposite for Macy. Macy was, Macy and I, Macy was, you know, the partier or whatever, just cause like, I mean, she's a year younger than me. And here I was sheltered and fucking in ministry pretty much my whole life. And, so I didn't know what a fucking party was, pretty much. So it was very different. But we kind of like balanced each other out. Anyways, we're married at this point, right? And I'm working part-time on top of working for the church. And I decide that I want to get back into full-time work, and that's whenever I started to get into pest control. Okay. And keep in mind, even though I'm excited I got this new job, I'm still dealing with this depression, or so I thought, right? And I've never been to therapy at this point. I've never been to like a licensed professional or anything. So I was like, okay, something's wrong with me. Let me go to what I know, my family doctor. Okay. And just for the record, chat. All right. If you have any kind of mental health struggles that you have not sought help for, but you want to, my best advice is to not go to your family doctor. Go to a licensed professional that knows how to psychoanalyze you and, you know, give you medication that is best for you. The reason why I say that is because of what you're about to hear. And brace yourself. All right. So I go to my family doctor, tell them about, you know, what I've been dealing with. Okay. And all that. And so she didn't really give me any kind of like, you know, long explanation or anything like that. She puts me on Zoloft. Now, Zoloft can work for some people, but for me, because I'm more prone to be on the bipolar side or like the more manic side, so like really up there, right? She didn't realize that this was like pouring gasoline on a fucking fire. Okay, so I was already depressed, and I'm like, cool, this is gonna help. Right? No, we go downhill some more. All right. And I'm not trying to like make this sound light and shit. After I started taking it, I thought that things were getting better, when in reality my mood was like fucking switching constantly. Okay. And then what had happened was, while I was training at this new job, I met this girl And I'm not going to go into great detail, but I basically, I had an affair, and yeah, it went from 0 to 100 real quick. And then that happened, and I come home. This was like on like a, I don't know, a fucking Wednesday night, right? The next day, I'm driving back from where I stayed, to go to work. All the while, I like made up some bullshit lie to Macy to make her think that I was going with like a dude from work or whatever, when in reality it wasn't. To this concert, which I did see
anything you're not comfortable with.
Yeah, well, but I mean, I think there's something powerful whenever you actually bring shit up that would be embarrassing otherwise, because I mean, truth be told, I haven't really dealt with this shit, and me just like talking to you guys, even though like you guys aren't like therapists or anything like that, like it's a way to kind of process it, really. But it was on like a Wednesday night, and it was at a concert that we decided to meet at, and to be fair, I did actually go to the concert. But this girl and I, we met there. We had been in communication. We met there, you know, did stuff, and then the next day, I go to work. Well, then I come home, and at like, you know, the concert was great. Obviously didn't go into detail to Macy about, you know, what happened. And at this time, I was streaming on Facebook as ItsCoozie43. Okay, so this was back in January of 2019, so 2 years ago. Okay, and I was streaming, and the whole time I'm sitting here like streaming, but I'm also like talking to this chick on the phone or whatever, like just texting or whatever. And Macy low-key comes in and kind of catches me. But she doesn't, if that makes sense. She just comes in to ask me a question. I get kind of startled, and she kind of looks at me like, hey, you good? And then she goes back out, and then she comes back in, and she's like, can I talk to you? All right. So then I end the stream, and basically Macy catches me. And the man and mature thing to do would have been to face it and to seek counseling and to deal with it right then. But what did I do? Hello, Nelly. You're just gonna have. Actually, I've told you this, so I'm telling chat about my life story. Okay. So I've told you this, but the man thing to do would be to face it and to own up to it. But what did I do? There's this concept called fight or flight that people face whenever they're under tremendous amounts of pressure and stress. And some people choose to fight, aka they stay and they work things out. Or some people, like myself, choose to flight. So essentially, that night, this was already at like 9:30, okay? That night, I packed my shit, and I dipped out. And I found, and honestly, yeah, I grew wings. I did. I flew the fuck out, man. No. I packed my shit, in my twisted mental state that I was in because of the medication I was on and the counseling that I had yet to go to, or like the lack of therapy that I'd been through. I was very manipulative and chose to make it seem like it was Macy's fault when it wasn't. And when I left, I contacted the girl, and I found myself living with this person for the next 8 months. I left on February, and I'm not going to go into much detail about my time up in Boone, which is where this chick lived, where I worked. The only good thing about being up there was that it was the mountains and it was fucking gorgeous, and the weather was amazing. That's it. It's kind of weird how the universe works because, and like I said, I'm not going to go into great detail about my time away. But while I was up there, it's kind of funny because it's almost like the universe turned the tables, pretty much, where it was almost like I experienced everything that I had put Macy through, right? And like this person was very manipulative, very verbally abusive. Now I was never verbally or, God forbid, fucking physically abusive. If you are a male and you put hands on a woman, I'm not saying that women can't defend themselves, but I'm just saying, bro, what the fuck, right? So I was never like that, but manipulation and guilt tripping and basically, I guess you could say mentally and emotionally abusive was how I was. And I went through that. And it was almost, yeah, I went through that. And I spent literally like 9 months. No, 7 months, because I came back in August. I spent 7 months up there. And there was a point, mind you, the whole time I'm up there with this person, I'm like in denial about the shit that I'm putting Macy through. I'm like viewing her as the enemy. She did this to me. She did nothing. All right. All of this was not only because the medication I was on was not good for my chemical makeup of my brain, so therefore it sent me into like a manic and AWOL state. But also, like, I just didn't have any help, and I chose to do these things, even though I knew that there were serious consequences that come from it. But the whole time, I'm like, I don't know. And then something happened internally where it just all hit me like a fucking 2x4. I realized how much I had fucked up. And let me bring my family into this. While I was up there, whenever I left, my parents didn't know anything about it. I called the pastor of the church that I was like worship leader at and told him I'm not coming back. Figure it out. My parents, mainly like my dad, because my dad experienced the exact same thing from my mom when they were married. And so because of the circumstances, my mom, though she wasn't happy, she understood. Okay. My mom has since become a completely better person and all that stuff. But growing up, it was very, very rough. So anyways, my dad, namely, was very, very upset. And whenever he found out that I left home with no intentions of coming home, he did everything in his power to try and make sure that I came home. He took out what is called IVC papers on me. And what that means is you can call your magistrate or like your local law enforcement jurisdiction, right? and they can serve up like a warrant to basically come and take you into the hospital to get you evaluated and all that stuff. So I'm sitting there without a job, you know, just chilling at the house, and the cops come to the door. How they tracked me down, I have no idea. They must have seen my location somehow, you know, whatever. But I get IVC'd. They don't even put handcuffs on me because I'm not gonna fuck with the cops. Like, I'm gonna cooperate. I didn't understand what was going on, but I was cooperative. Rode in the cop car to the hospital, and the whole time they're asking me questions like, you know, do you want to kill yourself? Have you hurt yourself recently? And I'm like, no, I'm literally fine. I'm literally so delusional and in denial that I'm thinking everything's okay, right? So long story short, while I was up there in the hospital, unbeknownst to me, my dad was on his way up to the hospital to basically like take me home. My car and everything else was still up there, right? But he was gonna basically like take me home. And that night was the first night that I actually stood up to my dad, and actually like spoke my mind. I'm not saying I'm proud of it, but I think it definitely shifted the dynamic of our relationship, because my dad has been in my life, my like, ever since I popped out the womb. Even though my parents split when I was young, he made every priority to be involved in mine and my sister's lives as much as he could. So, like, typical divorced kids would go with their other parent, you know, every other weekend. We would be with our dad every weekend and once during the week. So he was very much involved. He got into scouts with me, you know, all that stuff. He took me to every single fucking like little league, you know, sport thing that I need, or that I was in growing up. He was very much involved. And dad was never, he was never mean. He was always gentle, but he was also very stick your head in the sand and try to avoid conflict. And so he would do things like just sigh out of disappointment. And even though there was never like any kind of abuse from him, my sisters and I still had this fear in the back of our minds of like, we never want to disappoint dad, right? And that night, whenever I somehow evaded my dad kidnapping me, we'll say, he had called me and was like, I'm not leaving until you're with me. And I was like, well, plan on staying here a long time. And for the first time, I heard my dad get emotional, like crying, because of how fucked up the situation was. And me in my manic state was completely apathetic. I showed no emotion. I didn't care. And yeah, so that was the start of the 7-month period where I was just, yeah. So I will say this, the only other good thing about being up there, aside from it being the mountains and beautiful and the weather being great, I actually sought help and went to an actual licensed like therapist and practitioner. And they took me off of the Zoloft that I was on, because they were like, okay, because of your tendencies and the chemical makeup of your brain, Zoloft is arguably the worst thing that you could possibly take for yourself. So we're going to start you on a different medication that's more suited for you and all that. And yeah, we're going to start from there. You're going to go to therapy. So I started actually talking to like a therapist, and which at the time was just kind of like this weird thing, because the therapist, you know, kind of met with me in the middle and tried to understand where I was coming from, and at the same time didn't, and it wasn't very beneficial. Anyways, fast forward to August of 2019, and something fucking clicks. And it's almost like it hits me like a fucking 2x4, where I realized how much I fucked up. And I realized how much hurt I put, namely my dad, through, and more specifically, Macy. Now, before I go into all that, throughout my time, I used my time away as a time to explore and see things through the eyes of, like, you know, the world, and not through this Christian bubble, right? And throughout that time is where I really started to explore, you know, different mindsets and all that stuff, and, you know, do some digging myself. And throughout that, I realized that, you know, Christianity, like, just isn't for me. Now, I will say over time, I've like balanced things out. I started out obviously believing that fucking God's dead, and, you know, the devil is God and shit. Like, it was fucking weird. And then it shifted to more of like, you know, okay, I don't want anything to do with God or Christianity. Don't talk to me about it. Don't say that you're praying for me. I will get offended. You know, to now it's more like, you know what? Everybody, if they just mind their own business, I'm happy for you. If you find satisfaction in whatever mindset, ideology, theology, you know, whatever, then good on you, right? I'm not gonna sit here and try to debate with you on things, just like I would expect someone not to do the same with me, you know, because, I mean, that's just being a decent human being, is just, you know, letting people find their own happiness, right? And I will say this, for me, ever since I've had that mentality and that, I guess, belief, if you want to call it, I have felt more free than ever, because I feel like I'm finally making decisions for myself, and not because something told me to, or someone told me to, or because if I make this decision, this is going to make this person being, you know, and I say person or being because I'm talking about, you know, whether it be, you know, the God or, you know, my pastor or whatever, happy, right? So anyways, it all clicks and it all hits me in the face. All the while, mind you, and this is why I fucking love Macy. The whole time I'm gone, if you were to be in her shoes, what would you be doing? You would be trying to sue my ass, because in some states, adultery is actually a crime that you can be charged with, and the state that I live in is one of those states. She would have been doing everything in her... If I were in her shoes, I would be doing everything in my power to make that person's life miserable. Okay? On top of that, I'd be moving on. I'd be, like, you know, going out partying, trying to forget the shit that this person put me through, right? What a normal person would do. Macy is not a normal person. Okay? Because the whole time I'm gone, and another ad time chat. So if you're not subbed, I do apologize. Whatever. The whole time I'm gone, everyone is shitting on me, as they should, and telling Macy to give up. But for some reason, Macy is sitting there holding out that things are gonna get better, that the things will get better, that something's gonna happen, and all that stuff. Now, was she pissed off? Yeah. Did she really want to see me? No. Because she was fucking mad. As she should have been. But whenever everything clicked, I was like, I gotta get out of here. And I was like, but where am I gonna fucking go? I was like, Macy was the last person I thought of, because I knew that she didn't want to see me. But it was also 2:00 in the morning whenever I was going through all this. While I was up there, I like tried to kill myself. I had multiple panic attacks where, you know, you ever have the ones where you're literally crying and then you just end up on the floor and you don't know how you got there? Yeah, that it was like that. I was going to kill myself by getting so drunk and falling into the river. But like to the point where I actually like wrote out a note and fortunately did not do it. It was bad. It was that was arguably the darkest time of my life I've ever been through. But it was also a very formidable time for me too, because it let me be myself or find myself, so to speak. It let me think without any other kind of influences taking part of that. So yeah, but anyways, it all clicked, and so I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I just shot a bullet in the dark, and I called Macy, 2:00 in the morning, and she picks up. Of course, she was sleeping, but she picks up, and she was very confused, and I just asked her. I was like, "Can I come home?" And to my surprise, she actually said yes. Now, it's not what you see in the movies where, you know, the person comes home and you know, it's like this great reuniting moment, right? That wasn't the case at all. It was more like she opened the door, she looked at me, and yeah. And that whole night we didn't sleep because we talked a lot. We had a lot to talk about because the entire time I was there, the entire time I was there, I was away. Don't get me wrong, I still had somewhat decency, right? So I would send Macy money for rent and bills like every month, like I used to before I left, right? So like she wasn't necessarily struggling per se, where like she was getting fucking evicted and all that stuff, like you know, but I wasn't talking to her, obviously. But that night we talked, and we began the restoration process of where the fuck do we go from here? What are we gonna do? And to say that I am grateful for to say that I'm grateful for Macy is it's an understatement. Now you understand whenever I've made these little smirky remarks about she should have killed me a long time ago. That's what I mean. Nobody else would have put up with my bullshit. Nobody else would have stuck with me throughout that whole thing. And I'm not saying I was her favorite person throughout that whole season by any means. I'm not saying that at all, because she'll tell you that. But what I am saying is no one else would have had that mindset of, I'm not giving up on this. And sorry. Yeah. And ever since then, dude, it's been a long journey. There's been a lot of reassurance that I've had to give Macy.
BTW, you didn't post the link into your Facebook post.
Oh, I didn't? Wait, I thought I posted it in the oh well, fuck it, whatever. To say that it's been easy, it wasn't. But we are where we are now because of all the shit that we've been through. Our relationship seems strong because of the shit that we've gone through. Marriage is not easy. bad time to post it. It's all good, bro. Marriage is not easy. And I think for it to work, you got to have somebody who's really fucking strong. And I clearly am not that person. Macy is. So to say that I'm grateful for Macy is an understatement. To say that I don't think it's even far-fetched to say that she saved my life. And I just still, to this day, cannot wrap my head around the shit that I, like, put her through. And her still choosing to let me back into her life, you know? And so fast forward. God damn. Anyways, to answer Raven's question about why the fuck am I not, like, religious anymore and all that stuff, it's because of all that shit that I went through. Through that process and through that season, I realized that just wasn't it for me. Now, here's the deal. I still fuck with some worship music. The melodies and the instrumentation of some worship songs are really fucking catchy, and I like it. But the reason why I haven't done any of that in my music streams is because I don't want people to think that I'm like trying to take them to church or like force anything on them, because I'm not. I'm just like appreciating all types of music, essentially. But yeah. That's pretty much it. I come home. Mason and I start the restoration process. In the meantime, I meet Drew, and we start the Saw Dudes because we met through streaming. I had started streaming again, sparingly, and he had come into my chat, and he was really awesome, really supportive, and we just like clicked, right? And he was kind of going through a rough time living in Georgia, wanted to be closer to his kids, which were like about 3 hours from me. And so Macy and I don't know if this was like the smartest thing for us to do, considering just how fresh everything was. But Macy and I talked, and we decided to, let Drew, come live with us for a while. And yeah. That was whenever like the Saw Dudes became a thing, and that's where I met a lot of people. And then after about a year, Drew moved out, and I kind of went solo. And now I'm here on Twitch, pretty much. but yeah, dude. We still chatting. Yeah, I'm coming to a close with this. So yeah, chat. I'll say this: if you've got someone that is even somewhat close to Macy, do not do anything to fuck up, and let them go. They are more valuable to you, your health, and your life than you could ever imagine. Whenever I came home, whenever everything clicked, the idea of relapsing, so to speak, like going through this whole shit again, like is not even a desire to entertain the thought of by any means. And now that Macy and I are about to get a house together, once we do that, we're going to start trying to have a kid and all that stuff. It's just like, I'm glad I got that shit out of my system at the onset, rather than it being 20 years down the road and something happens, right? And I'm not trying to lessen the severity of that season or anything like that. But I'm just glad it's over and done with now. But yeah, man, Macy is crazy. I don't know what the fuck she I don't know what the fuck she thought she was signing up for. But the fact that I came home a completely different person than whenever I left, and she's still, like I said at first, like she was pissed, of course, as she should have been, but she still allowed me to come back into her life. That is true love in a fucking nutshell. Talk a lot of shit about one of my ex-girlfriends, but I often wonder what could have been. True. You never know. I mean, it might not hurt to give it some time and then maybe try to reconnect and, see if things have changed or, if same old, right? But anyways. So yeah, that is my life story. I understand if you might think less of me because of what I've done or what I've been through. And I completely understand. I've lost every friend that I had before I left. I've lost. I had a huge core group of people that I could just call up and and talk to at any time, and I can't do that. They don't want anything to do with me. Now it doesn't help that all of these people were a part of church and Christianity, and so I understand them not wanting anything to do with me because of the beliefs I have now or lack thereof. But to anyone who's listening or watching, if you think less of me, then I 100% understand. If you want to unfollow, I understand. I was kind of scared to share this because whenever I came home, I viewed the Sududes as like a chance to start over. Or even before that, whenever I started streaming again, I changed my name to ItsCoozie TV as a aspiration to start over, essentially. And I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to address it. But now I'm at a point where I feel like in some way, shape, or form, this story can somehow help someone, or at least be comforting to somebody else who might be going through the same shit. So if you're, for whatever reason, going through that where someone has cheated on you, I can't say anything. If you are the person that has cheated and your significant other has not given up on you, you need to do whatever you can to fucking resolve and get back with that person. Because if you have put them through that shitty of a situation and they're still wanting to work things out, you need to fucking work it out. Especially if you guys are fucking married. Because A, divorce is fucking expensive. It's very complicated too. And B, I mean, reality is whenever you make a vow when you marry, you're saying for better or for worse. And to say that was probably the worst that Macy and I have ever been through and probably will ever be going through, whenever you say that, for better or for worse, you go through it. Fortunately, Macy held up her end of the bargain where I did not. So anyways, but yeah, so that's where that all ties into my dad, right? Bringing it all back an hour later. I've been talking for fucking an hour and 20 minutes. Oh my god, I'm so sorry, chat. We'll get into gameplay. Unfortunately, that ship has sailed. Damn. That's a story of redemption through unconditional love. True. Yeah. If I ever were to believe in Christianity again, just based off of what I've known through the years of being a part of it, if I ever were to believe in that again, the reason would be because Macy is the closest evidence to that, as far as like unconditional love and grace that I've ever seen in my life by any and all measurements. So yeah. But anyways, unfollows. Oh shit, my follower count did go down, huh? But it's very prodigal if you ask me. True. Yeah. So where it all ties into my dad was the night I came home. Macy and I didn't sleep. Like, we literally sat on the couch and we talked the entire night. From 2 a.m. to 7 a.m. We talked. We did not sleep. And Macy, the whole time I was gone, Macy was very comforted by, you know, her friends here as well as my family. You know what I mean to you, but yeah, I do. And so Macy texts my dad and is like, "Hey, do you want to meet for breakfast?" And dad was like, "Yeah, sure. What's up?" And she was like, "Nothing. I just want to, you know, I just want to meet for breakfast." And dad didn't know that I came home. Excuse me. And so Macy and I, we go and we meet dad at IHOP for breakfast. And she gets out of the car, he gets out of his truck, and I get out of the car. And he looks at Macy, you know, and he, you know, because I mean, he fucking treats her like a daughter. Because I mean, my dad's just fucking awesome. And then he looks at me, and he just stops. And dude, it was the weirdest, but one of the best things I've ever experienced in my time in my life, dude. We embrace, we're fucking bawling our eyes out, and it was just a really, really cool moment. So yeah. Since then, it's been a bit of an adjustment for my dad, because my dad has been very like pro-church, pro-religion. You know, and for me to go from being exactly the same as him to being the exact opposite now, it's been some work both on my end and his end, understanding where I'm coming from and me like doing things out of respect for him. So for instance, like just kind of watching how I talk, you know. But then the argument is like, well, I don't feel like I'm being myself around you, or I feel like I can't be myself around you. And so we've talked about that. But yeah, so now, dude, like our relationship is fucking solid. It's really cool to know that I don't have to be a certain way for my dad to accept me and be proud of me. And if you are going through something similar, like having similar thoughts, first of all, that's not exactly the healthiest mindset, because you're putting all of your validation and your sense of value in what someone thinks about you rather than what you think about yourself. And in order to be truly happy and more sustained in life, you gotta start giving less of a fuck about what people think about you and start seeing yourself in a way that makes you feel confident. So as long as you're happy with yourself, that's all that fucking matters. You know, people are going to run their mouth and they're going to say shit and they're going to give their opinion and all that stuff. But ultimately, it's up to you to decide whether or not you're going to let that affect you in a negative manner. So, yeah, the biggest thing is I spent the majority of my life looking for validation in my dad being proud of me. And he told me he was. He's told me that he's proud of me. Not even because I've done something. Like, you know, he's been very like edifying and building up in the way that he talked to me, right? Especially growing up. But still, there was still this desire to be validated, you know? And because I was looking to someone else, and this doesn't just apply to your family, it applies to relationships. The reason why you're probably going through relationships like a middle school child goes through underwear, like changes pretty quickly. That was a horrible analogy. It's probably because you were looking for validation and value in other people, and that's not healthy. You know what I'm saying? So the sooner you can start being confident in yourself, and the sooner you can start realizing like you are enough, that's the whole reason I say don't stop being who you are. You're valued, you are loved, you belong in this community, because you do and you are, and nobody else has to say that, because the reality is if you are in that spot where you're looking for validation and value in other people, then it's never going to be enough. That person can tell you good things about yourself all day long until they're blue in the face. But until you believe it for yourself, you're just going to keep going through this fucking cycle of needing validation. Right? So I'm telling you, man, the shit that I've been through in the last 5 years, really, has been some of the most formidable years of my entire life. Not just because of like the time or age or whatever, but just the events therein. So yeah, but that's the 1.5 hour long documentary of Coozie's life outside of streaming.